One of my favorite things to do in Mumbai is to stand at the doors of the Mumbai local and let the wind blow across my face as I listen to some music. It's very pleasant and I always look forward to it. Where was I heading to? Well, I was going to Parel. Nestled amongst these tall buildings is a beautiful company called Ambit. Ambit is well known in the chess ecosystem recently for having sponsored Vidit Gujarati. Immediately as they sponsored Vidit, the next tournament that he played, he won it at the FIDE Grand Swiss. I had come today to this structure to interview their director Karan Wadhwa. This is generally where Karan sits and works, but today he was in a meeting and we decided to do our interview in the library room. While going towards the library room, I went through this nice little panel that was created on the staircases where it showed the journey of Ambit. This company is now well over 25 years old, and every year it has managed to improve bit by bit and become bigger and bigger. And with their foray into chess, they hope to stay true to their tagline, which is acumen at work. The library of the company was where I decided to do the interview, and knowing Karan is a good chess player, I brought with me my chess set. Hi, Karan.
Sagar, thank you for coming over.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've been at the Ambit house few times before.
Yeah.
And it has always been so cool to come here. And today we also have chess.
Yes. No,
Maybe we'll play it later, but I wanted to know more about you.
Okay.
And your journey into the world of finance, but also into the world of chess.
Yeah.
I think you were very ambitious as a chess player when you were growing up.
So I think it's I think it's one of the first sports that I took up. And by way of background, we lived in a building South Bombay at that time, and there were few of us in that building that were all interested in chess. I think you had the benefit of meeting our coach at one of the events that we conducted as well.
Sanjay.
So Sanjay sir was actually responsible for coming over, and I think it was every Sunday we'd rotate houses, and I think about 4 of us started playing chess quite actively. So I think that's really how it started at a young age.
And you were what, 6 or 7?
Yeah, I think I was closer to about 9 actually when I think back at it. So I got a few good years of chess in before leaving for boarding school.
Aha. So you went to a boarding school where?
Yeah, so I think I completed my grade 7 here in Bombay. Played a few of the local chess tournaments that we spoke about, right?
Bonvita.
Bonvita back in the day, yeah. And it was, I think, grade 7 after that I decided to go to Singapore. And there, I, along with chess, I actually used to also play table tennis quite actively. Competed actively there as well. Table tennis was not a sport you wanted to carry on in Singapore because they're just unbelievable there. So I remember
also badminton, I think they are very good at.
Yeah, phenomenal at both those sports, right? So I trained with a few of their national athletes early on, and I actually realized that I'm not going to be able to compete here. So I unfortunately dropped table tennis. I still play casually these days, but chess is something that I think remained a passion.
So it's a big part of your life still.
I would say that it's something that was forgotten for the longest time. So I think, post Singapore, if one thinks about it, I went off for an undergrad to the US. I then went off for working in Japan. I then, came back to India, then went for my MBA. So, chess wasn't a priority then. And I think I'd really give it to COVID for allowing me to restart chess, right? I think that's really when I started to pick it back on.
Was it like during the COVID, you started just you had a lot of time, or you started watching some streams, or how was it?
So, it was interesting because the second half of my MBA was completed during COVID. Right. So that last semester that we have, I was in New York and we were stuck doing, study from home. Right. And that's when I had a lot of extra time. And I said, well, how do I kind of make the most of this? And I contacted Sanjay and I said, do you happen to be still giving
Really?
chess lessons? And he said, yeah. He says, yeah, I happen to still be giving chess lessons. I said, why don't we start every Sunday? And I think I just started to, pick it back on. And that's really how I came back into it.
So chess started becoming slightly more prominent in your life, and now you find time for chess kind of few minutes every day.
Yeah, I try to start my morning. I know I've joked around with Vidit and you about this, but this is serious. I start my morning with a couple of games of 2+1, right? I think it just gets the mind going and sets me for the day. And then as and when we in some ways are fortunate and less fortunate to be stuck in traffic in Bombay. So that gives me a little bit of time to play chess. And obviously that ends up happening on my mobile device, right? So I rarely get to play over the board.
You play on chess.com?
I play on chess.com.
What's your elo like there?
I try not taking it too seriously, because I think, and you'd agree as well, right? We've spoken about this, that it's easy to get carried away by focusing just on points. I think, in the field of financial services that we are in, it's a competitive field. To try adding something else in life that's, equally competitive creates, I think, a little too much pressure.
Where's the sort of winding off thing?
I think, let's take a step back and let's talk about how we got into chess as Ambit, because that's where you'll understand why it is that we're trying to take on chess, obviously from pure passion, but also from the perspective of it just not being a competitive hobby, right? And really how we started that is that, we are an organization now that employs close to 2,500 employees, right? And during COVID, it was an interesting phase because we kept adding to our workforce. Right? We were part of what is considered essential services, financial services, right? So we kept adding to our workforce, and unfortunately, not all team members that joined us were able to meet. So the first year was, you had hundreds of employees joining that had never actually met each other. So we decided that we needed to create some kind of a culture exercise that allows employees that are joining without being physically present to be able to associate with the brand, that is brand Ambit. That's really when we ran these surveys, we brought in experts to talk about culture, we created these vision exercises, what would Ambit 25, Ambit 30 look like? And what we decided and what we concluded on was that it's important to rally all the Ambitians behind causes that they are most passionate about. I think that's really important, right? Because, historically, it's been very easy to handpick a few initiatives and almost push employees to take on those initiatives, right? But I don't think that's the best way to go about it. So when we ran these surveys and we spoke to employees, it was interesting that chess actually came out as something that a lot of people in Ambit are passionate about.
It's very cool.
Yeah. And that's when we said, let's kind of move away from this, from this use case of chess just being a competitive sport that a few of us play, to it being something that we resonate with, right? As a sport, as a brand Ambit. Because remember, our motto is acumen at work, right? And in some ways, when I think of acumen at work, I think of a pawn storm, right? So we came up with these creative ideas, and that's really how we got into chess as an organization.
Wow. And that's how then you thought about working with Vidit?
I won't take all the credit for that. We're a chess committee that we have. We brought in an outside consultant because Ambit is fairly understated in how we go about these things. We don't have much of a social media presence either. So when we brought on this outside consultant, they were able to advise us on a multi-phase approach on how to create these initiatives around sports. Phase one was associating yourself with a athlete in chess that resonates with your own brand values. Wow. And really, after talking to a few athletes, we identified Vidit as someone that we think resonates with brand Ambit, and I think that's, worked out well for both of us.
Yeah, it was like he began his journey
Yeah.
with the biggest result of his career with
Yeah.
Ambit.
Yeah. So again,
At Grand Swiss.
we're not going to take credit for that, right? I mean, did we ever, were we happy or we were ecstatic that Vidit was able to qualify for the candidates through winning that? But really, that's not what it was all about for us. For us, it was about associating ourselves with a sport that we think is relatively underrepresented. Right, we still are a country that's very passionate about cricket, and if you think about the kind of talent we now have in the top 10 in the world of chess, every Indian should be proud of the chess talent that we have in this country, and we're just trying to play our little part in promoting that.
And with it, did you feel like here is someone who kind of resonates with what Ambit is like and so on?
Yeah, I think
because when he won, I saw that you had him on the website, and I mean I think somehow Ambit feels very proud to have Vidit on as their brand ambassador.
Yeah, I mean it's been a very fruitful association, right? Of course, it's a new initiative for us, so we didn't really know what to expect when we got into it. We are purely doing it out of the passion for the sport, and that's really how we've been able to rally many Ambitians behind this initiative. With its success is as I said, it's very positively taken by us as an organization. It allows us to further our initiatives in chess, right? And we have a few things planned out. As I said, with it was phase 1. There is a phase 2 and there's a phase 3 to it as well. But I think so far I think it's been going the right direction.
What comes next for Ambit and chess?
So I think let's talk about a long-term vision, right? So let's ignore what the smaller steps and let's talk about what the ultimate aim would be. I think Waka has set a fantastic example for most people, right? Because what they're really doing is they're working at the grassroots level of chess and trying to build up talent from that phase. Of course, to support the stronger athletes gets you the eyeballs, which is obviously the intention of most brands coming in. But ultimately, it will be about getting to that grassroots level. Working with colleges, getting people more inclined towards playing chess. Because as I said, there's just so much talent in India for this sport, and I think we need to nurture it.
Brilliant. And you yourself are the vice president at Ambit.
Just got promoted to director, actually.
Director, yeah. I think in May.
Yeah.
So, in a way, you must be very busy, right? Like all your time. Can you tell us, like, what does it entail to be a director at such a big organization like this?
Yeah, so at Ambit we have 5 businesses, right? We have an investment banking business, an equities business, an asset management business, a wealth management business, a lending business, right? And it's whereas my primary responsibility is sitting as part of the wealth business, I do spend bits and pieces of time across other businesses as well. It means a lot of traveling. Right, we have global partners as well that require us to travel to Japan, sometimes Singapore, sometimes Dubai. So I'm definitely on the road quite a bit, but we always try to make time for some of our passions.
But do you think like chess helped you in any way? Like in the people say like you become more analytical. You kind of look at the next move and stuff. But you are in both the worlds.
Yeah. So. I think focus, right? I think what chess does is, at least when I'm playing, right, is that I can't be distracted when I'm playing, right? So from that perspective, when there's a particular task at hand, I see myself being very focused on that particular task. And if I historically took an hour and a half to take on a task, it probably happens a bit faster now. I think that kind of attention is what chess has brought back in to my life as well. I also think, chess teaches you a lot about how to handle defeat, right? Because at least if you're playing in the format that I do, it's a very unpredictable format. And if you think about what we even do in financial services, be it the markets, public or private, these are very unpredictable markets. And I think you have to learn to balance between wins and losses, and you have to learn to take it on the chin and move on. So I think that's something else chess has taught us.
Brilliant. And you also follow all the happenings of the chess
Well, I follow
world?
you. Yes, yes. No, of course. It's I enjoy watching chess passionately. I think much to my wife's displeasure, it is a very active Friday night activity at the Wadhwa household. But no, of course.
Are you the only chess player in the home, or you have someone else also who loves it like you?
It's interesting, Sagar, and I don't think I shared this with you. My sister and my brother-in-law, her husband, have also started being trained under Sanjay.
Oh.
Yeah, so they are London-based.
Okay.
And every Sunday, they get trained under him as well. So they're picking on the sport. My father used to play quite actively as well. That's really what got me into the sport as well. I started beating him a little too often these days. So I think we stopped playing as much. He doesn't handle loss well.
Well, of course, I think, but it's nice that you play now as well. Like maybe when I was very little, I started off playing with my dad, but now he no longer plays against me.
Yeah. No, but I've been talking to him about it, and I think it's good as well because it keeps you active, it keeps you engaged. So I think I'm always encouraging them to play as well. But of course, when it comes to watching chess, remember having an athlete that you support playing gives you more of an incentive to watch.
Correct.
Watch the tournaments, right? But at the same time, there's some great tournaments that are going on these days. The rapid format is always a more fun format to watch than the classical format. So I think these days I'm watching a bit of that. The Speed Chess Championship, I think, is expected to start, I think, on the 5th or 6th.
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, yeah.
With, Hans versus Magnus and Hikaru versus Firouzja.
Yeah, so I think that's been a super interesting tournament, right? So I think I'll be following that.
Amazing. And the Olympiad.
Are you commenting on that?
Yeah, I will be doing like the recaps on the next day.
Okay, awesome.
And the Olympiad as well coming up. I think you're also very excited for that. It also kind of puts India onto the world map.
No, I think we have a great shot at winning. We have a fantastic team. I think if they play as a team, I think there's a phenomenal chance to actually go ahead and win this one. So we will be watching them closely.
And finally, I think once when I came to Ambit and Vidit was doing a simul here, I could literally sense the excitement here, with everyone wanting playing there, and I think the mood was brilliant. I guess there's only going to be more chess happening at Ambit, in the days to come.
Yeah, I think, Sagar, it was a bit of an experiment, right? We thought of, it was our first event with Vidit, if you recall. And we said, what would get people really excited about something like this? And, we said, Vidit kindly enough offered to say, let's do a simul. That's a format that has worked out well for us. So as you're aware, we had, a combination of folks playing that, right? You had Ambit employees, you had some of our top wealth clients, you had some of our investment banking relationships there. I believe, was it 14 boards that we had?
So.
14 boards that we had playing. And I think it turned out to be just an awesome event. We've received requests to follow up with that event. We have to find Vidit's time.
Another simul.
Yeah, we have to find Vidit's time for that. He's committed to doing it blind this time. So,
really?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Maybe you should take part and score a win against.
I think a lot of us will try that.
Well, thank you, Karan, for this time. And if you don't mind, we could play a game.
No, I look forward. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Before the game began, Karan told me that his rating is roughly around 1700 on chess.com. So he opens the game with e4 and I respond back with the symmetrical e5. Knight comes out to f3 and knight to c6. As you can see, we are not playing with a clock. The idea is to just play a friendly game. But looking at Karan, I knew that it's not going to be easy. He was super focused. He wanted to play good chess. So I go knight f6, inviting him for knight g5, which can make the game very sharp. Karan decides to be very stable and plays knight c3. I put my bishop to b4. Later I checked, knight takes e4 is an interesting idea where you can quickly get back your piece. Okay, bishop b4. He pushed his pawn to d3 and I castled. And in between the few moves, we also spoke with each other a bit, discussed a few things. But very soon, things started to get very serious. White castles. And I played my pawn to h6, just playing against this bishop g5 pin. And he asked a question to my bishop, which anyway I wanted to take. B takes c3. And now I had an option between playing d5 or the solid d6. And I decided to go for the latter. I put my pawn on d6. Karan now has the bishop pair. He also stopped me from going bishop g4. And a very typical maneuver in these structures is to put your knight on g6. He went knight h2. And I played my knight to g6. Controlling the f4 square. Although white has the bishop pair, black's pieces are slightly better placed, and this move f4 came as a bit of a surprise to me because white is giving up his bishop pair, which is an important facet that he has in the position. And knight takes f4, rook takes f4, and here is where I had this nice little move d5. The point being that if you take, I take with the knight, I attack the rook and the pawn. And if you play rook d4, I can go c6. And if you take the knight, I can take with the queen with a slightly better position for black. But Karan played bishop b3 and I took. He also took back. And here I began to think, like, what is it that I can do? Queen e7 looked tempting to me to keep the queens on the board. You know, queen e7, knight d7 and knight e5. If I can engineer these three moves, it would be amazing. Knight d7 was another move that I thought about, but then knight g4 is something that I did not like. So I thought, let's go to the end game. And I played my bishop to e6, hoping that after takes, I have the slightly better pawn structure, you know. So this was my plan. And here, I did not know how Karan would respond. e5 looked like the strongest move in the position. But would he play it? Because yes, he went for it. e5. Now, I had seen this idea, knight d7. Because after bishop takes e6, I take back and you don't have time to win the knight. You have to take the rook and then I take with the knight and maybe the position is roundabout even. So I did go knight d7 and he should have taken on e6, but he played knight f3. And this actually allowed me to slightly improve my position of the knight by putting it on c5. And this I did. I played my knight to c5. And I attacked the bishop. And he kept up the pressure with knight d4. It's a nice move there. Of course, there's pressure here, but I had this nice move, rook d8, pinning the knight. So he can no longer move the knight as his rook is hanging. What should he do now? Karan thinks for a bit and brings his rook to f1. This is a cool move. Unpinning and maybe threatening to take on e6. I had the choice between knight takes b3, bishop takes b3. And it was a bit confusing what to do here. Eventually, I decided to take with the bishop because my plan was to attack the e5 pawn with my rook next. So he must take back with the pawn. He did that. And this was my plan. Rook d e8. Very nice move. The point being that if you go rook f5, I have g6 and the rook moves, I take on e5. And otherwise, if you play rook e1, there's this fork. Rook e4 is impossible. Maybe the best defense he had was knight f5. Because after rook takes e5, he can go rook g4, attacking the pawn here, which is very difficult to defend. And if I play g6, he can play knight takes h6. And this was perhaps the best defense he had, but he played b4. And with b4, I had two options. One is to go backwards. The other was to come forward. I think knight d3 made a lot more sense because you are attacking the rook and also the pawn. And so I pushed my knight to d3. He played his rook to e4. And this is where I should have taken with the rook. Rook takes e5. But instead, I took with the knight. And this gave him a chance to fight back. Knight b5 would have been a very strong move. The reason being, if I go c6, he goes knight d6. And after rook e7, he has knight takes b7. If I take, he can take the knight. But instead he played rook e1, allowing me f6, and now my knight is more solidly placed. Knight came to b5, attacking the pawn here and here, and I played c6. He cannot take this pawn, as after rook a8 the knight is trapped, so he must go back. He went actually ahead with knight d6, and I played rook e7 to defend this pawn on b7. Black is now a pawn up, and knight f5 is an aggressive move, but somehow after rook d7 I have placed my rook on a very nice square, one square diagonally opposite to the knight, so it can never easily be attacked, and also it's very actively placed. The knight comes to d4. And now a5 is played. Well, here I had many options, but I thought I'll open up the queen side. The knight came to f3. Asking a question to the centralized knight, I took, because this really mangled up his pawn structure even further. Like now he has two isolated pawns here, and my idea was to come into the position rook d3 and attack the pawn on c3 and f3. Now Karan could defend with rook e3, which looks like a decent move, but I really liked his next move, which was more aggressive in nature, rook e7. I played rook f7, offering a trade. If he took, my king would take it, and rook e8 was made to just put the king on the side, and he came up rook e3. I guess rook d2 was the best move here, but I played rook d7, defending my rook, and he brought his king into the game. Now this pressure here between b4 and a5 was something that I was not particularly comfortable about, so I took, and he thought for a bit. He could take back both the ways, but he decided to take with the a pawn. I brought my king to g6. Black is doing well because he has an extra pawn, and also his rook is actively placed. Coming back to f7, here perhaps a very good idea was rook e7. Takes and takes, and okay, black is still better, but he played f4. And here I had a tactical chance which I missed, rook c3 and king e8. Instead I played the move g5. He came back rook e4, and I brought my king to g6 because my king can actively be placed on f5 and it won't be hassled there. Karan brought his king to f3, and now the black king came into the f5 square. Slowly and steadily I was making progress, but clearly I had to stretch myself a bit. It was not so easy. H5, and now the h3 pawn is weak. Karan played a logical move to trade more pawns. I had this move g4 in my mind because rook g4, rook e3, king e3, king g4. But I decided that first let me trade off a pair of rooks. He took king e3, and this is where I was thinking what next to do, and the move rook d5 came to my mind. And the variation that I liked a lot was that if he plays hg, I'll play rook e5. So now he has to trade, and I take fe, and then I pick up this and I'm a pawn up. So Karan actually played the move c4, and now I was able to simply trade off the rooks, and with that I would be a pawn up in the king and pawn endgame, and there's no way for him to win. Even if I can take with the king and he plays h5, I can simply come back to stop the pawns. So after rook e5, Karan realized that the game was over, and with a smile on his face, he decided to resign. But it was such a pleasure to play with him, and I'm very grateful for Ambit for supporting with it, and also they will be part of the Chess Olympiad, where you will get to know more about it in the coming days. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.